there is gold. There is content gold everywhere on their website. And when a lot of companies try to, and a lot of marketing teams try to move, they're like, we're overly invested in Google ads. We need to start to diversify into, LinkedIn and other types of channels. If you measure it the same way that you measure Google, you're going to get stuck on the lead gen hamster wheel in paid social. There is data published on hundreds of thousands of leads and tens of millions of dollars in spend showing that that strategy is highly ineffective unless you have deal sizes much larger than 100K a year. And so when you move into these channels, we need to be thinking a lot about the creative. And that is what holds up a lot of companies because they're used to just taking an ebook and using a lead gen form and putting it on LinkedIn. But over time, as we've continued to work with customers, we've seen there is gold. There is content gold everywhere on their website. The feature pages, the use case pages, customer case studies, the messaging they have on their homepage. There's all of this strategic messaging, product marketing work, social proof content, product update announcements, or product walkthroughs that are highly valuable and could be repackaged and reused directly inside of these channels and be a total unblocker for companies to go out with a different strategy inside of these channels. Thanks, y'all, for being here. For those of you that don't know, this is the Refine Labs Expert Series. We host this once a month, and we bring in typically like a CMO or a demand leader from either one of our customers or a thought leader. But lately, we've decided to also introduce some of the stars at the Refine Labs team to be able to share particular things that they've been doing with their clients across multiple companies and be able to share that experience. It's also something that I'm seeing a lot, this topic in particular. So today, we got the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Chinella, Senior Director of Demand Gen at Refine Labs, joining us. I was telling Matt in the back before we started, there's like a whole agenda here on my phone. I might look at it for a second, but I'm just going to be treating this as if I have an opportunity to get a bunch of free consulting from Matt. Matt's really much more in the details than I am today. And so I know that he has a lot of tactical stuff to share. And sometimes this podcast and these events are higher level. I can assure you this one will not be high level. We'll be getting really into the details, and hopefully there are some takeaways that people can go and use, whether it's later this week or into the rest of the year. And I want to frame up the topic a little bit before we get into it, because when you get out of advertising in PPC, think Google ads or putting ads for pay-per-click on like G2 or something like that, and you get out of that intent-based, get a click, send them to a landing page, and you move into social channels like LinkedIn, YouTube, connected TV, any other place where the creative, what you put in the channel is not just blue letters like it's in Google. We need to put a video, an image, words. Additionally, the people that are seeing these advertisements are not searching for our thing. They're just browsing through their feed and getting the content that they would get. And so we need to figure out how to deliver a message and knowing that that is the psychology of the person using the platform. And when a lot of companies try to, and a lot of marketing teams try to move, they're like, we're overly invested in Google ads. We need to start to diversify into, LinkedIn and other types of channels. If you measure it the same way that you measure Google, you're going to get stuck on the lead gen hamster wheel in paid social. There is data published on hundreds of thousands of leads and tens of millions of dollars in spend showing that that strategy is highly ineffective unless you have deal sizes much larger than 100K a year. And so when you move into these channels, we need to be thinking a lot about the creative. And that is what holds up a lot of companies because they're used to just taking an ebook and using a lead gen form and putting it on LinkedIn. But over time, as we've continued to work with customers, we've seen there is gold. There is content gold everywhere on their website. The feature pages, the use case pages, customer case studies, the messaging they have on their homepage. There's all of this strategic messaging, product marketing work, social proof content, product update announcements, or product walkthroughs that are highly valuable and could be repackaged and reused directly inside of these channels and be a total unblocker for companies to go out with a different strategy inside of these channels. And so we're going to be talking about that with Matt today. Matt does this with customers. One of the first things, and I'll let him explain his process, but looking through the website and figuring out all the different key assets that we already have sitting there that we've invested time and money to create, that if we connected the product marketing work and that type of work with demand gen and had that flowing downstream, we'd have almost an infinite amount of content and creative we could use for these channels. And so Matt, maybe like a minute to a little intro on what you've been working on and what you're up to, and then we'll get into the details.
Yeah, sure. What's up, everyone? First off, thanks so much for spending an hour with me today. I'm flattered that you all decided to spend your lunch hour with me. I've been a huge fan of Chris and a acolyte, I guess, of the Chris Walker methodology since Chris first started working on LinkedIn. And one of the highlights of my careers was getting hired by Refine Labs and getting a chance to actually put that playbook into motion and then iterate on it myself with the class I've worked with at Refine. And that has given me a really great window into how to deploy creative for clients and how to kind of think about it. And then also how to level up or round out your messaging across your website and have it be complemented by what you're doing on paid social, which is, to Chris's point, a completely different execution than a lot of what you're doing on PPC, because you're trying to have, to me, like you're trying to really harmonize 3 messaging tiers at the end of the day. If you want to break it down, your brand messaging, your product messaging, and your social proof. And in some way, shape, or form, you're trying to either isolate or combine those things to educate your market, to get them to have affinity for you. And when they are in market needing your solution, you are one of the first people in their consideration set. And so your paid social obviously needs to achieve that objective for you, whether that person is 3, 6, or 12 months away from actually making a purchase. So I do a lot of work with clients, helping them kind of figure this out, IDing where they're weak and trying to level that up. And so I'm not here to just talk about it. I actually came with several examples that I'm going. So if you're here and you're listening to this on Revenue Vitals or something like that, tough luck, dude, because I'm going to be doing some screen shares.
Yeah, jump to YouTube if you're listening to this afterwards.
You want to actually see me break a few of these things down for clients. So I guess like one of the first places I would start is like going back to the aspect of like your messaging tiers. And like, you know, normally when I work with clients, they're usually way over indexed on brand or product messaging on their website, but don't really have both figured out very well. And then even the ones that I do see, they do have it figured out. I'll give an example of one who I really think kind of has all 3 figured out. They have no idea how to repackage it for paid social. And that I think is just one of like the criminal things, like when you have all those ingredients organically or through your direct traffic and you just don't have that figured out. So one thing I want to offer for people, by the way, like if you want to volunteer your website and have me kind of do a dive on it, man, I'm more than game to do that. Even if I may not have like a complete thing, like if I had a couple days to look at your website and give you some recs, but I'm more than happy to dive through and sort of talk through some of the things on your website and give you some ideas for ways to deploy it. So happy to do that. So, all right, let me start with the main thing. Oh, looks like Jeanette already is volunteering her site. That's awesome. Thanks so much for that. All right, so let me start with features, because I think features is probably one of the places that is the most obvious area. I mean, people, whether we like it or not, they actually do buy off of certain features. Certain features are usually what catch people's eye first about your product. And most people, if you have like a really robust kind of solution, like a platform, let's call it at the end of the day, normally they're really attracted to a couple of features and that's what gets them in. And that's the first thing that they're trying to use. And then it's on your customer success team or your inside marketing team to like get them to use other aspects of the product. So I'm going to do like my first example here, because one particular use case of this I have is in the edtech space, clinical education software in particular. And so I'll share a screen and kind of get into this example. And one of the ways you can kind of look at this yourself internally is like just looking at how you have your website even organized. So this is core higher education group. if you don't know this company, if you don't work in ed tech, you probably don't. They sell clinical education software, so like experiential learning management systems. So think about companies that have a department of pharmacy or department of nursing, where there's a lot of externships and preceptor relationships and all these other things. Like they sell a really specialized LMS that lets you manage that from a clinical aspect. A really cool product. It is a super robust product if you get into their flagship product, which is their experiential learning management. I mean, look at this platform, just this one UI right here, and sort of how robust this is. Like, look at all these features that they have within the learning management software. And when you think about how most companies are trying to market or advertise their product, they normally just stop here and say, explore learning management software from core and see kind of all the things you can achieve. Well, you kind of have to use your advertising a little bit to educate people a little bit more on these aspects. And so looking at the clues here, if I'm looking at this UI, one of the first things I'm thinking about is like, why do people usually buy this product? And so looking at the order of features, my guess is that scheduling and requirements speak specifically to accreditation. If you work in the clinical education space, being accredited is a huge part of your ability to get enrollment. These things are, key features. These are the reasons people buy, because they are literally trying to solve this with a spreadsheet or trying to square peg round hole this into like Blackboard or something like that. Not really a use case that it's for. So when you go to LinkedIn Ads Library is such an awesome resource for looking at stuff like this. And so when you go in and you look at kind of what Core does from an advertising standpoint, like this is sort of the creative that they run, where it's like requirements tracking, bogging you down. Like program admins can customize requirements, keep track of them, update student. Like you're just listing this out on the creative and not really thinking about showing them, right? You're just telling them that you can do this. And this is just the wrong ad format for what you're trying to accomplish with this kind of messaging. This is ripe for a carousel ad or a Loom video where, like, if you can get in the product with someone on your product marketing team and they can give a 1 minute rundown on how you can specifically customize requirements or track them, or do smart match scheduling, which is a randomized scheduling feature that they have if you go down their product page a little bit more and how that works. Like these sorts of single image ad presentations for really complicated features is not the right way to go about trying to educate your market on this, especially when this is the kind of the wedge that gets you in the first place. So when we talk about features, as kind of like a core component of what we're doing with ad creative, I feel like the thinking sometimes is all wrong. We're trying too much to tell people what the feature does instead of show them how it works, and then what capability they end up getting out of it. And that's ultimately where I think the big miss is, especially with a lot of softwares that have features that have features with a lot of sub features or give a lot of capability within it.
Yeah, so I want to talk about how to like really put this into practice, right? And when we think about explaining the features, like you mentioned that like leveraging a video might be a more appropriate way to tell the story than a single image ad. I think most people lean towards single image ads because they're cheap to build, right? Like they can be very inexpensive to build a single image ad against a 30-second well thought out commercial. And so like in this exact example, do we want to go through Core's website? Do we want to find assets that explain these things and then show people that the way that you can tell this story already exists? Because I think when you really break it down, what holds people back is, hey, I want to do this strategy on LinkedIn, or I want to do this strategy on connected TV, but I don't have $60,000 to make a video. So let's talk through how people can, and to be clear, like if you are really running if you're really running connected TV and you're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in media, you should be spending an appropriate amount of money on the creative to get that result. But if you're doing a $5,000 a month test, if you're trying to get something up more quickly, leveraging existing assets that can be repackaged quickly by a producer or an editor, I think is a great way to get the ball rolling on a channel for an initial experiment.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more on that. I got another features example too that I think I actually work with this client, full disclosure. So I'm gonna walk through, eat my own dog food here, because this is something that I think we have to do with our advertising strategy. Let's go back into the software space. I'll go back to share. This is CRM, one of the most crowded categories out there. I mean, CRM is brutal as anyone who has ever worked in it can tell you. Let me hit this up real quick and share real quick. So this other feature example I think is really cool because I really like I think this company has really good product marketing and struggles a little bit more on the brand messaging aspect, but this is a CRM designed for field sales. And one of the things I love about software in general, and I really, really like software products that do not sell into like a lot of other software companies. So when you think about a company like My Customers, they sell a lot into field sales. So manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, like people who are on the road all the time, who really don't like CRM because it's not really made for them. And so I really like that solution. A lot. And so this company has really nice product marketing. I know the previous head of marketing, if you all know Mary Keogh, who did an excellent job leveling up the product marketing for this company. And so they had all these super nice features that are really unique to the field sales CRM space. And there's really only a couple of competitors that play like in this super little niche down area. And so they have mapping and routing, account segmentation, lead finder, territory management, reporting analytics. These are super specific use cases for field sales orgs who don't necessarily sell to desk jockeys, AEs who are looking for like calendar scheduling and things like all those other things to try to make the full funnel sales experience super friction free. So if we go into one of their features like lead finder is a really neat little product they have where they like port into Google Maps or Waze or anything like that, and help field sales reps find accounts to sort of go knock on doors and potentially unearth new leads for them. So when we go and I was thinking about, we were trying to create more of a full funnel strategy in this aspect. And so one thing I wanted to do was like, we needed to have high level brand messaging. We needed to have product marketing where we kind of walk through each of these features. And the first thing we started doing was just simply doing, to Chris's point, single image ads. Well, this is a really nice page that has a lot of capabilities that you kind of walk through with this. And if you're trying to essentially create zero click consumption and have people basically get the entire point on paid social, not have to click into the site and scroll down to figure it all out. Well, single image ads, which is largely what we have been doing in this instance, or where we started, is not the best route to go, but we did start in this route. So what are we doing? We're, of course, moving into other ways that we can present this. And to me, the most obvious one is carousel ads, where you use carousel ads to sort of walk through, here's all the things you can do with the lead finder feature from My Customers. And you literally pick the 3 or 4 main things here that make the most sense, that are the biggest use cases for the feature, and run through it. Very similarly, with My Customers, they have another feature called account segmentation. Also super useful, a way to visualize your accounts on a map for your team so they can prioritize tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 accounts. Chris's past experience at Homa, probably there's a lot of relevancy with that. And so again, like, this is not something that lends itself well to a single image ad, yet we kind of started with that. But this goes back to like 30-second to 1 minute Loom overview where you kind of walk through it. This company has a very technical founder who can kind of walk through that in a very easy to understand way. Or again, carousel ads where you can walk through like commanding your account, a way to visualize it, not missing follow-ups, and pinpointing accounts to drive revenue. These are things you just cannot explain with single image ads. But it's not just this particular company. A lot of companies try to walk through features using single image ads and try to get you to the landing page to scroll through the whole thing, when really probably the best way to go about doing that is using carousels or using short form video to explain that in a more comprehensive manner, where they don't have to leave the feed in order to absorb the entire point that you're trying to drive home. Let anyone follow up with a comment there, or Chris, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I mean, just a note on data, like if you are relying on people to get to your landing page in order to consume the message, 99.4% of LinkedIn ad impressions do not receive a click. And even then, those clicks can be a like or an engagement, so it's not even that clear. And so an impression might cost 5 cents. A website visit might cost $10 to $20. And so leveraging what the space that you have in the feed with the low cost distribution in order to actually tell that story is a much more highly effective, cost effective way for sure to get that across.
Talk about in that, because it's actually interesting. Like, one of the best use cases I have, like one of the best click-through rates I have with one of my clients, and we have a super focused ICP. We have like tons of like industry leader thought leadership videos where they do these like chats with, people who really know what they're talking about. This is one of these industries. It's medical device where peers, when they really listen to their peers, but do not necessarily care what the marketing team has to say. And we're getting like 1.25 to 2% click-through rates on some of these ads, which is phenomenal. But when you think about that, that means like 98 out of 100 people don't click through and actually check the product page out. So if you're trying to like optimize for that, I mean, you're at best optimizing for 2 out of 100 people to actually go to your website and check the content out at best. When you think about other sort of metrics that LinkedIn has recently sort of introduced, dwell time probably being one of my favorites recently, you now have a way to measure how often people are like paying attention to your ad. And it gives you a nice comparison point between single image and carousel, because one of the worst things to measure when you're looking at carousel ads versus single image ads is like the number of clicks, because they measure card clicks differently than single image clicks. But dwell time is a bit of an equalizer in that respect. So if you're looking at a carousel ad versus single image ad and you're like, how do I compare the two? Like dwell time to me is probably the best way to look at it. The higher the dwell time, obviously, the more you stop the scroll and people actually are absorbing the messaging that you have in the ad. So just be aware of some of the new metrics that LinkedIn rolls out that give you a more holistic way to measure how people are absorbing and engaging with your content when you're doing paid social.
We'll probably get into questions in about 5 to 8 minutes here. I got a couple more from Matt to set the table. So what are the common missteps? Like we watch a lot of companies try and do this in order to get a new advertising strategy up and out more effectively without having the creative be a big roadblock. So like, what are the things that get in people? Because it feels simple, right? Everybody's on here. It's like, oh, I can just go to my website and pick that out and have someone design something and run ads. It feels simple. What are the things that people miss?
Biggest thing to me is distribution planning, and like planning ahead when you make a pillar content piece or you have a huge content effort. Like everyone here has had a instance where it's like, we want to make a sizzle reel for our company, or we want to make this huge first party data ebook. So like an example would be, I have one example I can bring it up, but I can talk through it as well. There's one company that the company is called Gloat. They're an HR type platform, really, really great company. And they have some awesome logos on their website. You can check them out: MasterCard, Seagate, Standard Charter. And they have people on their HR team who are more than willing to go on camera, and they have these really well-produced videos of all these customer success stories. But one of the things that I always find is a shame is like when people make these success stories and they make them 3.5 to 4 minutes and then think that they can just put a 3.5 to 4 minute testimonial video on LinkedIn and expect people to watch that entire thing. So there's just not a lot of planning ahead where like you're working with your video agency and it's like, okay, like first off, just get the whole story. But then also we need a 30-second version of the story. We need a 15-second version of the story. We need a 60-second version of the story. So like planning ahead when you're doing these big video projects with your videographer, with your agency, or with your freelancer, and say, hey, like within this scope, I want to get the full story because it'll go on YouTube. It'll go on our company page. It'll sit there in perpetuity until we decide it's not worth it to the business anymore. But like, if you want to try to make that into an ad, it's really hard to ask your videographer to tell the full story, and then they make it, and then you give it to them again and go, oh, by the way, we actually need a 30-second and a 60-second and a 15-second version. Because if you let your person know ahead of time that you're looking to get that kind of modulated content out of the full piece, then they can plan ahead a little bit in how they shoot it, how they script it, how they pace the questioning, how they sort of re-ask questions. Because any good person who is doing a video is going to ask the same version of the question a couple times to get a couple different answers. So when you get into the planning of your content, understand that it doesn't just stop at being on your website or being on your YouTube channel. You want to extend the life of it as far as you can. And so just understand what specs you need in order to execute on that, and give it to your personnel ahead of time so they understand it.
It's the same thing as like the very popular and basic thought leadership, break it down for long form, break it down for short form. And then you have clips for LinkedIn and TikTok, like the thing that I've been doing for a long time, but applying that to the assets that you create from product marketing, brand, and content marketing. And so long form ebooks, customer testimonial videos, like vertical pages that when you sell into FinServe or you have specific technology for tech or something like that, use cases. There's a lot of gold that sits there that could be good for one to many, and it could be really appropriate for one to few when you think about some more specialized content. And I think there's just it's just taking the existing sort of content waterfall framework that most people know well for thought leadership, but now applying it to product marketing and content marketing.
Let's get into the long form ebooks, to your point, or the long form like first party research thing, because this is one of my favorite examples. I absolutely love Vendor as a company. I think I know their marketing lead. I like their CEO. I like what they do. I think it's a really nifty product. And I just kind of like the way they run themselves. Their SaaS trends report, I think, is one of the most interesting first party data pieces that get released quarterly. It's really well done. They recently have a partnership with Brex, who's another really well-known player in the payment space. And I think this is just such a well done piece. But when you think about the way they promote this for paid social, it's really kind of bare bones. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that they could promote this, just given how thick it is. It's such a thick piece of content: leaderboard, purchase trends, renewal trends, day-to-day purchasing trends, like how to control spend, all of this stuff. And the way that they promote it normally is through like, maybe a carousel ad or like a single image ad or something like that. But when I have a big piece like this and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about media planning for it, one of the first things I'm thinking about, especially when I have an active CEO, like I know Vendor does, is how do I get my CEO to talk about chunks of this report and then basically redeploy it out in paid social to kind of give people bite-sized chunks of what is really a comprehensive report like this. Anytime you do something like this with your first-party data, what are you ultimately trying to accomplish with this content? You're trying to shape perception of it, right? And so it's kind of hard to shape perception when you're kind of anonymously promoting it on LinkedIn, or maybe there's a couple of LinkedIn posts. Like, know that some people kind of get feedback differently through audio, video, and text. And so the fact that they go through this effort every quarter to shape opinion on the state of procurement in SaaS and beyond, and don't use the mouthpiece of their CEO or any of their other personnel with audio or video format, or go tour this on a podcast and then try to re-promote it that way, I think is a bit of a miss in terms of the effort they put into this and then how they choose to get or extend the shelf life of it. So when you think about when you're doing these kind of first person pieces for yourself, if anyone here is doing any of those, like going into distribution planning, I'm trying to shape perception of whatever it is I'm trying to do. So I want to make sure that I have this audio video component of it where people hear how I talk and think about it, very much the same way you talk about demand, Chris, and the way you were doing it 5 years ago. Like, companies should be using data like this the same way you do with Paceto, and try to shape perception around the category that they're playing in.
Yeah, I think companies spend a ton of time, money, and resources to create these really thick PDFs, and some of them, especially when they're using first-party platform data, can be really compelling and helpful. That to have a workflow where you spend a quarter and all this engineering and resource and content marketing and design time to make this thing, and then to take the thing and say, okay, the first thing that we're going to do before we even release it is we're going to have an event, and our CEO is going to present the findings of this PDF that could be easily become a deck. And then we're going to have a 1 hour cut of presenting these findings. And then we can take the video, put it on top of the slides, and make a 30-second overview of one of those things. And then we have thought leadership ads, and we have organic content for our CEO. We have niche down videos that we can put on YouTube and search optimize. And so it's about thinking about the plan. Especially when you're going to put a lot of effort into one thing, like for my live event that I do on Tuesdays, there's a lot of effort and energy and resources that go into putting that on, that to not be able to think and make the whole use of it for a marginal amount of additional money, I think we really need to be planning for that. Cool. Matt, anything else you want to add on this topic? I know you had a bunch of notes planned. I know you wanted to get a lot of key points across, so I'll give you the floor for that. And then after that, we'll transition to audience questions.
I have more notes, but we can get into questions after I make one more point, especially if you go with video, for instance, or audio, or you're going to clip things. Don't underestimate, I think, the music overlay that you're going to apply to some of your content. I watched this really interesting thing last week from Mickey Hart. Anyone knows who Mickey Hart is? He's one of the percussionists for the Grateful Dead. And he had this great docuseries where he talked about the like percussion over the context of like sports and life and all these other things. And I thought it was super interesting. And I think about brands that do a really good job of that. There's really not a lot of examples in like B2B tech or anything like that I could think of, but like Apple and Volkswagen in particular, like do a really nice job of like using music to elevate sort of what they're doing from a multimedia format. I think one of the better examples in the B2B space that does this is a company called Build, BILLD. Look up their YouTube channel and like get a sense, like their ICP is commercial subcontractors, blue collar stuff. Again, I told you I love B2B tech. That does not sell into other B2B tech. They sell into kind of other trades or industries. And I really like the way that they utilize music in their content, and especially when they redeploy it for ads. It really matches their brand. It matches who they're selling to. So like be intentional about those kinds of things. It's not what you like, it's what your audience is going to identify with at the end of the day. And it is very additive when you nail it. So that's probably one other point I would want to leave people with when it comes to repurposing their content, especially if you're going to try to go the route of video.
Love it. Stephanie, all right, I'm sure you got some stuff queued up, so let's get into it. For any of those people that want us to look at their website, or they're working on a specific thing, or they just need a clarifying question, everything's open for the rest of the time. So feel free to come on live and ask your question.
Awesome. We're going to pull up Sam for a question first, and then we do have a website shared if y'all want to take a look at that.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks a lot for the session, and nice to meet you, Matt. Your energy is infectious, so thanks a lot for sharing your insights. My question specifically relates to what you talked about around that vendor report. And when you think about the size of potential decision-making units that this customer is trying to get in front of, how do you go about breaking down and selecting the messaging, the ad creative, the format, as a holistic campaign to get that message in front of the full decision-making unit?
Yeah. So in the vendor example, like when you think about, they release that quarterly. So you get like every quarter, you get a chance to iterate on it. So I think you just have to start with the starting point and then sort of just post-mortem it every quarter and then be like, all right, what worked and what didn't work? What got traction, what didn't get traction? And what will we do differently with the next quarter report? Like if you like that, something like that they do, it's really serialized. So you really are giving yourself, signposts to, improve on it and add new things and experiment, because you're always going to be doing it every 3 months. So when you have something that you're going to be consistent with, have a starting point, a foundation where it's going to be your bread and butter. You're going to do it every single quarter, no matter what. And then always be thinking about what are 2 or 3 things that we can do differently in distribution or in format that we can test and just see what happens with it.
I guess to go a little deeper, if it was something that was quite niche, for example, let's say cybersecurity business, something like that, you sell specifically into CISOs and CEOs who understand technical messaging, etc. Would you consider breaking out more brand-led messages to run alongside that to perhaps influence the CMO, the CPO, the finance director, etc.? Or would everything sort of ladder up to that one report?
That's a good question. Chris is smiling. He may have an opinion before me. So Chris, if you have an opinion, I'll let you jump in first, because I want to think about that question.
Yeah.
So I just got to say, like, vendors platform, I don't know what it costs, but like finance can make that decision on their own. Even deeper in a bigger company, like procurement, a sub function of finance, can make that decision on their own. I think that people are very obsessed with this like buying group concept. But oftentimes, like one singular person can make that decision if it's important enough to the business. And I think we need to at least consider that. And so, like, if you're vendor, right, and you're selling a procurement platform and you're wasting your time making creative for the CMO that has no bearing on whether, doesn't care if you use a procurement platform or not, or which one it is. It's just wasted effort for the idea of marketing to the buying group. So I think we need to just be practical about this. And my rationale forever is deliver a business message to business leaders, and every single person that matters will receive the message or send it to the person that needs to know it. And so just elevating, instead of thinking about how do I repackage my message about the procurement platform for the CMO, why don't I tell a business story to the C-level executive team around how vendor helps their business, and then maybe the CMO will care a little less than the CFO. And then you don't run into all of this operational complexity around ads and creative and targeting for this persona versus this persona versus this persona, when in reality, that level of granularity, you probably need 100K, 200K a year deals to justify that type of work.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I remember when I worked in manufacturing, we would sell an OEM product, and the people who ended up using the product never actually ended up being the one to make the purchase decision. It was always, to your point, laddering up. And I always remember splitting messaging or ad thinking, or when I was trying to create content around it. There was like the core user, and then there was the end user, right? And so the end user was the person who was ultimately probably making the purchasing decision. But the core user was usually the person who was most enthusiastic about the product and was your internal champion, the one who was going to use it every day. I got a really good friend of mine who works in the cybersecurity space, who works for Mandiant. And I remember interviewing him when I had a client at Refine in the cybersecurity space, and asking him about how much does CISO actually get involved in these purchasing decisions. And he was telling me they do an incident response, like high level incident response for big companies. And he was like, usually it's an event or something like that that ends up sort of spearheading that. They call it like breach miss or something like that, where they'll like, there's a breach and all of a sudden like there's a need. And then the CISO comes in at the end of the quarter, the end of the year, and goes, hey, what do we need in order to like shore up our cybersecurity? So I really always feel like you have an end user and a core user that you're ultimately probably messaging or advertising to. And I would probably never try to complicate it more than that at the end of the day for your advertising strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's
yeah. And if it just to be for some people, that advice, like if you're selling $1 million a year solution to 100 accounts, then maybe that strategy makes sense, where you need it's cross-functional transformation across the business. And you need all these different people, IT, security, finance, marketing, sales, customer success, CEO, finance. Like if you need all those people and the deal size justifies it, then it might make sense to make an event that's specific to the finance department, an event that makes sense that's for the IT department. And so I just want to, so for the edge cases, there is a reason to do that sometimes, but for most people, it's probably not worth the squeeze.
cool. Cheers, guys. That's the answer I wanted to hear. So yeah, thanks.
Right on. Good to see you, Sam.
So we do have Jeanette who is willing to share up a website. So I am going to give you screen share permission.
All right.
We can get that up.
Let's see. So we're an education technology program. We sell reading programs to schools and districts. So we kind of have a main website. Are you seeing my website?
Oh, yeah.
So we just redid the website. We have some brand messaging on the homepage, but we have what we consider product pages over here and then solutions pages over here. So our products, we have something for K3. It's called Reading Horizons Discovery. And we have one for grades 4 plus, which is called Reading Horizons Elevate. One question is, like, should we just put the product names here and then the solutions like this? Because to me, it's like, I'm wondering if it'd be better. But let's just say we go on one of the product pages. We were thinking about driving people through ads. We actually don't do many ads at all. So we're just kind of getting into it. Driving people to the product page, what type of ad would you run? Like it's more for brand awareness, I guess. And then we also have like a lead magnet on every page. So we're also considering driving people to the squeeze page for the lead magnet. So we're thinking that those ads would be different, right? So if you're going to just kind of create an ad for the product, that might be different than if you're going to actually try to promote the ebook. So maybe just some thoughts around what types of ads you would do for those two different cases.
Amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Let's do it. This is a good example.
So this is a really good example. I think one of the first things that I would ask is like, do you guys have a high level POV on literacy that you can sort of umbrella under the product before you actually get into it? Like just sort of a universally known problem that no one's done anything about yet. Do you have anything on your website about that to use as kind of a starting point or an entry point into your company?
Do you mean an actual piece or just like a perspective on something?
Perspective and a piece, obviously that would be a great additive to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have basically an instructional methodology. Like we teach reading, which everybody needs to learn how to read. So we're very mission based, but we teach reading with an instructional method that was like originally designed for special education teachers for students who have dyslexia. Very complex, very difficult to teach, but we've totally simplified it so that every classroom teacher can teach like a special education teacher. So we call it our method, our instructional method. which really sets us apart from everybody. So we have a page for the method as well. And I'm sorry, now I'm on my landing page here, so I can't.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we do have a method here, which is really what separates us from other companies that just sell reading programs.
So I would start here before you got into the product at all, because I think you need people to be attracted to your method before you can actually sell a product. At the end of the day, this kind of goes into what Chris did 5 years ago, where he talked about the state of demand gen and then started an agency by accident. So like, I think this to me is where you should start on advertising. How long is this video?
This video is, I think it's 3 minutes.
Many,
Yeah,
including
You can find, so this goes right back to my earlier point. Like, you got this probably really great 3-minute video that I bet you could condense into a couple 1 minute, 30-second, 45-second versions, and essentially start there. And I would start here before I got into your product, because people need an entry point into your methodology, I think, before you actually sell them something physical or service in nature. So this is where I would start before I got into products and ebooks. And I would and then, yeah, this would be my starting point, just generally speaking. Chris, I don't know if you agree or have a different take on this.
Yeah, same point. And I wouldn't call it your method. I would call it something that's like more descriptive. I would give languaging to that. I would
totally brand it something like it's the Reading Horizons method. You could call it that even if you wanted to. And then like putting this is pedagogy at the end of the day, right? Is what we're talking about. Like, this is like, you're talking about the pedagogy of teaching people to read through like a special education method, and you basically package that into the Reading Horizons method. And I think that is almost where I would start, like, and I would just begin here before I got into the product. But yeah, to Chris's point, I would brand this pedagogy in some way, shape, or form for yourselves.
And if, just a follow-up question, if we were to like put a white paper on this page for the method or what have you, would you suggest we don't gate that?
I would suggest not gating it. I would suggest using this video as an entry point and inviting people to sort of read the whole pedagogy. I mean, people in education tend to actually like to read longer form things. It's been a finding that I've seen. Going back to the core instance, I know they have like a trends in nursing education, for instance, that they run quite a few bit of ads on. So obviously must be doing well for them. So yeah, I mean, I think tucking your white paper underneath an offer and ungating it, I think, is a smart thing to do. If you want to know how many people actually read it, you can put a conversion on your ads, LinkedIn or Facebook, using scroll depth or something like that to get a sense of like how much people actually, consume the content, if assuming it's on HTML. And then, yeah, you can kind of use that as sort of the way to measure the success of it or not.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Hope that was helpful.
Very.
Next up, we've got Alan, who wants to talk through some format details.
Oh, format. Oh, let's do it.
Hey, Chris and Matt. Pleasure to meet you both. So I work in a B2B org. We're in the investment industry, which is a very compliance-heavy environment when it comes to marketing. Currently, kind of the crux of our company's content strategy kind of hinges on the blog. It's a lot of thought leadership, kind of market commentary, investment insights. And for my job, as it relates to kind of our organic LinkedIn feed, for repurposing that content is pretty minimal transformation. It's kind of a copy paste, because any kind of net new copy would have to go through a compliance review process. So I'm kind of stuck with the content as it exists on our blog. So I'm just curious if there are any sort of formats that tend to perform well for like kind of repurposing content as it exists on a thought leadership blog. We market to everyone from like independent practitioners to like enterprise executives, but our content on the blog is a lot of that market commentary, investment insights, and I've got templates set up sort of to put stuff in some like paste stuff into short videos and document tiles. But I'm just curious from your points of view if you've seen any formats kind of perform best for sort of that copy and paste approach from a thought leadership blog.
I got an answer for this one if you want me to go.
Go for it. I mean, I work with a compliance heavy clients. I'm curious. I'm wondering in my head about it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the first like 5 years of my career marketing medical class 2 medical devices, where it's heavily compliance driven. All the language is pre-approved. You can't change the language once it's approved. You have to go back through legal and clinical review. So like once you get the asset, that's the thing that you can market. And we had some things that worked really well for us. So if you had like a customer story, for instance, and that customer story got approved, or if you had a blog about a position on a clinical trial, or in your case, you had a blog about a position on a particular stock or investment sector or whatever, that treating those things as news cycles, where basically all you're doing is leveraging the media to distribute the high level message. So the people that just see the ad in the feed see, you know, blah, blah, blah company published this study and the study came out and told me this. And you can just take a sliver, like a quote that came from the article, and use that as a way to entice people to click and see the full article. So it's truly using social as a way, as a method of just getting someone onto the website to read the whole piece of content because of the limitations. And that can work really well. What I will say for your particular instance is that potentially your B2C customer is not worth marketing to that way. That a customer must have a specific lifetime value to be able to justify running a LinkedIn ad where their click's going to cost $15, or even like a Meta ad right now where your clicks could be $3 to $8. That sometimes you just, with the conversion and the click costs and all that type of stuff, you just can't make it work for, like, I don't know what your pricing is, but B2C typically like a lot less than $100 a month maybe. So I would just caution you on that. For that segment, I think you have to be running like product oriented performance marketing and be able to make the CAC to LTV equation work. You can be a little bit more customer journey oriented when you have larger deal sizes. Anything to add, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have more questions than I have answers. So I kind of would want to dive into like, okay, if POV blog, what kind of POV is it? Do you have any key partnerships? Just aspects like that. If you DM me, actually, I'm kind of curious to dive into the use case. I don't know if I have enough time to dissect it before giving you a credible answer.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I mean, it was the kind of, like, I would love to bring up the blog, but I don't even know if compliance would shoot me for doing something like that, exactly the situation. But happy to DM you. Thank you both. That was helpful, Chris. I appreciate that.
Cool. Happy to help, Alan. Yeah, DM Matt. He'll give you some more extra help. Playing in the compliance space, or like where there's a heavy regulation, can be a blessing and a curse at the same time, because everybody's got to play by the same rules. So you can figure out just how to play by those same rules better.
Compliance is one of those things where I feel like it goes into like advanced planning, and you got to kind of really have conviction about the things you want to do, and you got to kind of go all out on it. I got a client in the medical device space. They sell like a really niche thing for cervical fusion. And they have all these spine surgeons who use their product. And so they set up when they go to these trade shows, they set up these content series where they interview them. And they really do a nice job of it. And it's been one of our best performing ads when we've run it, because essentially they evangelize the product for them. And we almost get to bypass compliance, because when a peer says something about your product instead of you saying it as a company, compliance is usually a lot less, let's say, persnickety about the content that ends up getting distributed, because it's someone else saying it about your company and not you. So I don't know if I gave you an idea on that, Alan, or not, but just thought I'd throw that in there.
Cool. Stephanie, maybe time for one. Yeah, maybe time for one or two more. Or is there nothing queued up?
Nothing queued up, but we do have a little bit of time. So if anyone has any last minute questions I want to squeeze in here.
Going once, going twice. All right, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. Matt, thank you so much for joining. I think this might be your third appearance overall on the podcast. So one of the few people that have made 3 appearances. So shout out to you. Really appreciate the insights. Really appreciate all the work you're doing for Refund Labs and the customers. So thank you for everything. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Hope it was valuable. Hope you found something that you could take and put into practice later this week or into the rest of the quarter. So hopefully this was actionable for you to be able to get a new channel off the ground, or just get an idea that gets you thinking differently. So really appreciate you being here. We'll be back again next month. I'm not exactly sure when. Stephanie, maybe if you know the date and time for the next one, we'll just get it announced right now.
Yes, we will be back on Tuesday, September 17th. at 11 a.m. Central, and that's going to be on YouTube Strategy.
Ooh, yeah. So we got YouTube Strategy coming on September 17th. So the registration link is available. It'll be in the show notes. It'll be, where can people go to register?
People can go to the show notes on any one of the upcoming Revenue Vitals episodes, as well as if you sign up for the Refine Labs lab report weekly, we'll send out registration links. And we will send it out in the follow-up email for this event as well.
Amazing. So plenty of different ways for you to get it. Thanks all for being here, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. See ya.